Hi, my name's Phil. I like to come out politics. So at PMQs today, Kemi Badenoch predictably tried to attack the Labour government over the collapse of the China spy case by suggesting, as she has for days, that the government leaned on the CPS or otherwise forced them to drop the charges. But then Starmer fired back with a few facts which really should have instantly closed down Badenoch's main line of attack. Not that it stopped her continuing to dig herself deeper. At the end of it all she really achieved was demonstrating that she was a political opportunist, and a bad one at that. But first, for daily news and politics, please click the subscribe button to stay notified. So the China spy case collapse is very big news, which really should shine a light on how we're able to protect ourselves from foreign states, especially potentially hostile ones, interfering in our politics. It's just that the Tories are very badly placed to do this, given that they enjoyed an unwisely close relationship with both China and Russia while they were in government, only turning on Russia after their full-scale invasion of Ukraine, but not before putting an actual Kremlin agent into our parliament against the strong advice of our security services. Their national security credentials are not great. Now, just to remind ourselves of the only fact in this specific case that is public knowledge, two men were being investigated for alleged spying on behalf of China. The Crown Prosecution Service has chosen to drop the charges very recently and after a long process, citing that they no longer believed that they had strong enough evidence to secure a conviction. They specifically said that the government's refusal to classify China as a security threat led to that decision. And that's basically all we know. We do not have many pieces of the puzzle, so of course people are filling them in. Although Starmer did make a promise in PMQs today which should be interesting in future. Now, it's worth pointing out that several legal experts have cast doubt on the CPS's reason for not proceeding here. But that's neither here nor there at the moment. The key political game here is that Badenoch is trying to claim that Labour nobbled the case in order to cosy up to China and therefore are not the best person to look after our national security. She's trying to claim that if the Tories had remained in power, they would have given the CPS what they wanted and everything would be proceeding as expected. She even said herself, the accused spies were charged under the Tories but let off by Labour. Now, Badenoch had already been warned in effect. Starmer made a statement because he knew she was going to ask about this, right? It was obvious. So he made a preemptive statement on the matter to MPs before Badenoch even asked her first question.
On that point, may I update the House on the China spy case? I'm deeply disappointed by the outcome. We wanted to see prosecutions. Mr. Speaker, I know just how seriously, rightly, that you take these matters. National security will always be the first priority of this government, and we will always defend against espionage. In recent weeks, there have been baseless accusations put about by the party opposite. Let me set out the facts. The relevant period was when these offences took place. That was under the Conservative government between the years of 2021 and 2023. This period was bookended by the integrated review of 2021, the beginning of the period, and the refresh of that review in 2023, setting out their policy. These statements of government policy were very carefully worded to not describe China as an enemy. Instead,
Sorry, Mr. Stewart. Somebody who is on the Speaker's panel, I've told once before, should know better. Do not question my judgment. I thought it was important that the Prime Minister tells this House first rather than somewhere else. So please, this is very important to me and very important to the House. I take it seriously, so I don't need any more side comments. Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The review of 21 and the refresh of 23 were very carefully worded to not describe China as an enemy. Instead, they stated increased national security protections where China poses a threat and that the then government would engage with China to leave room open for constructive and predictable relations. The Deputy National Security Advisor, Matt Collins, set out the then government's position in a substantive witness statement in 2023, which was subsequently supplemented by two further short statements. The Cabinet Secretary assures me that the DSNA faithfully set out the policy of the then Tory government. I know firsthand that the DSNA is a civil servant of the utmost integrity, and those opposite who worked with him, I'm sure, would agree with that assessment. Under this government, no minister or special advisor played any role in the provision of evidence. I can't say what the position was of the previous government in relation to the involvement of ministers or special advisors. If the Leader of the Opposition knows the answer to that question, and I suspect that she does, I invite her to update the House. Last night, the Crown Prosecution Service clarified that, in their view, the decision whether to publish the witness statements of the DSNA is for the government. I have therefore carefully considered this question this morning, and after legal advice, I have decided to publish the witness statements.
But she persisted anyway, to which Starmer then fired back.
The substantive evidence was provided in 2023 by the previous government. That is when the witness statement was submitted. I am going to disclose it. They will all be able to read it. The substantive evidence was written and disclosed and submitted in 2023 under the last government. I noticed she didn't indicate whether ministers were involved in that at the time. Mr. Speaker, she questions what's in the review, the refreshed review in 2021 and 2023. Let me be clear. The then Foreign Secretary, sitting, I think, over here, the Honourable Member for Braintree, 1 month after the arrest, so absolutely the relevant time, gave a speech at Mansion House. It was called Our Position on China, setting out the government's policy. He said in that speech, summing up China as a threat in one word would be, his words, impossible, impractical, and most importantly, unwise. Foreign Secretary, Mr. Speaker, it wasn't just him. Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition was Business Secretary at the time. In September 23, the Leader of the Opposition said, her words, September 23, the relevant year, her words, we should certainly not be describing China as a foe.
So the Tory government not only provided the evidence which the CPS requested before Labour came to power, but the Tory government at the time had said they would not describe China as a threat. And the Tory Foreign Secretary who said that was none other than James Cleverly, whom Kemi Badenoch has chosen to be a senior member of her front bench. He's the Shadow Home Secretary. Starmer has also promised to clear the witness statements for publication. Now, at this point, it's already checkmate. Badenoch is attacking Labour, right, for doing exactly what her party in government actually did. The only way she could possibly proceed at this point is if she agreed to attack her own colleagues for doing exactly what she is now accused Labour of doing. She could do that. She could say, OK, I accept what you've just said, but they were also wrong. I would be different. Depends how you look at it, but that is what she would need to do at this point. But she didn't, of course. Badenoch also had no gotchas later in the questions. Like, if you're going to spend, like, basically all your questions, you've got 6 questions, right? And you're going to spend them all on one particular thing. You lay a few traps to begin with, don't you? You lay a few traps. But she didn't. She didn't have anything later on. She spent the rest of the questions just covering the same ground, just screaming cover up. Yet, as Starmer's pointed out, the witness statement she's complaining about came from her government. The decision to not classify China as a threat was made by her Conservative government, even though Labour have continued to take the same line. And all the fuss about Starmer's National Security Advisor, Jonathan Powell, having a meeting in September. They go, oh, that's shady, we need to know about that. Pointless, because the witness statements were submitted before that date. In other words, the CPS, according to Starmer, had everything they needed from the government before that meeting. So whatever took place in that meeting had no bearing at all. The problem with the Tories is they're attempting the tactics of opposition as if they've been in opposition for years. Like, if you have been in opposition for years, it's really easy whenever anything goes pear-shaped, anything goes tits up, to blame the government for it. It's child's play to do it, right? And you can always say you'd have been wiser before the event, right? After the event. It's like earlier on, they tried to say Britain's in a tax doom loop of taxation, right? Higher taxes. And it was all Rachel Reeves' fault. And you go, what? A doom loop is when you have an endlessly repeating cycle of a worsening situation. So they think higher taxes are a worsening situation. Okay. But a doom loop means you're in this endless cycle. Reeves has only had one budget. How's that a cycle? That's not even one cycle, let alone an endless cycle. If the Tories are trying to claim we're in an endless cycle of higher and higher taxes, isn't that their fault? You can't produce a budgetary doom loop with one budget. And the same here. Unless Starmer has told some pretty easy to debunk lies in Parliament today, he had the following points. The substantive evidence for the case, including witness statements, was gathered by the Conservative government, right? She's trying to suggest that ministers or special advisors leaned on the CPS. He said, no, we absolutely did not do that. However, maybe yours did. Maybe your ministers, maybe your special advisors did. You're going to have to answer that question. I can't. The Conservative government publicly declared that they were not going to classify China as a threat to the UK. The meeting concerning Starmer's National Security Advisor in September, which the Tories think is highly suspicious, took place after the evidence was submitted to the CPS, so had no bearing on their decisions. Badenoch should really just have seen where it was going, really after the first statement, but certainly after the first response to her question. She should have just tidied it up, moved on to asking other questions. But as always, not only is she struggling for anything to really pin on Labour, she can't recognise a losing hand when she draws one. Her main attack line was basically shot down in flames by her own shadow Home Secretary. And then, just for good measure, as I say, Starmer had also mentioned in his opening statement that those witness statements are going to be published. So according to the Prime Minister, the Tories are going to look even more ridiculous if they keep pushing this because of the witness statements, because once they're published, it should clear up what really happened on their watch. Badenoch is attempting to take advantage of the unknown here. Like I say, you've got this, it's like you've got this big puzzle, but there's only a few pieces in place. Is it plausible that Labour leaned on the CPS to halt the prosecution in order to improve diplomatic relations with China? Yes, you cannot categorically rule it out. Especially since Trump took power, we now have tougher trade with the EU, thanks to Brexit, tougher trade with the US, thanks to tariffs, and it's hardly sensible, therefore, to have artificially tougher trade with the third of the big three markets in the world. But motive isn't proof, and given that the CPS complaints about the government actually refer to a decision the Conservative government made, Badenoch was on a hiding to nothing. She had absolutely no gotcha of her own. She hadn't laid any traps which she sprung. She had no smoking gun. But Starmer is suggesting there is one in what he's going to publish with the Tories' fingerprints all over it. But let me know what you think in the comments below. For more content, you could subscribe to the channel or even join for access to streams, behind the scenes updates. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.